Canada Post?
Still very difficult.
Yeah.
There's no material progress to report in the discussions.
Yeah.
These discussions, these negotiations belong to the respective parties, and they're going to have to find a way through this situation. Obviously, we're there to assist them in any way that is meaningful, including all of the resources of the Federal Mediation Service. But this is a very difficult dispute, and both the union and the employer are going to have to find ways to achieve compromise.
Still no likelihood of you guys imposing binding arbitration?
That's not in the cards, as I've said.
Why is that?
Because deals, especially in perhaps even particularly this one, must be achieved through compromise. Canada Post is at an obvious pivot point in its history. Its business is its traditional letter business is under strain. It's looking for new commercial opportunities, and that means the employer and the union must work together on the way forward.
Besides the obvious difference between the ports and Canada Post, what makes this labor dispute between Canada Post different than, say, the labor dispute where you imposed a binding arbitration with the ports?
They're all different.
Yeah?
Every labor dispute is different. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Bacharach. I'm the Member of Parliament for Skeena-Bulkley Valley and the NDP's Transport Critic. I'm here today with my colleague Laurel Collins, the NDP's Environment Critic, and Heather McPherson, who's an NDP MP from Edmonton Strathcona. Also here with a delegation of Indigenous leaders from Northern Alberta, from the community of Fort Chipewyan. And this afternoon, the Parliamentary Transport Committee will be convening hearings on the situation involving the big dock in the community of Fort Chipewyan. This is an extremely troubling situation of a contaminated site that this federal government failed to disclose to the community, despite being in talks since 2013 about the divestment of this dock to that community. And so we're going to hear from those leaders, but first, let me express my concern on behalf of our party that the government has failed so utterly to address the community's concerns. This is a community that for years and years has expressed deep concerns about contamination in their community. And this is a case in which those concerns have gone almost entirely unrecognized by the government. So these hearings that are starting today are a chance to hold the government accountable, to get answers to questions about why the human health of this community and a place where kids swim, where the community gathers traditional plants and medicines, why those concerns about human health weren't properly addressed, and to change policy and ensure that this sort of environmental racism never takes place again. And so with that, I'm going to introduce the delegation from Northern Alberta. Today we have with us Tammie Tuccaro. Tammie is with the Mikisew Cree First Nation. We also have President Kendrick Cardinal from the Fort Chipewyan Métis Nation. And finally, we're going to hear from Chief Allan Adam from the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tammie for some remarks.
Hello, Tanse. Good afternoon. My name is Councillor Tammie Tuccaro. I come from Northern Alberta, Treaty 8 territory. I'm here today to help address our concerns of a contaminated site that belongs to Transport Canada that is located in our community. We come from a community that has many rare cancer rates, so we're looking to have this all remediated so we can all move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Kendrick Cardinal and Sikasun. I just wanted to say thank you for having us, and I'm the president of the Fort Chipewyan Métis Nation. I'm glad to be here. We've come a long ways from Fort Chipewyan to address our concerns about environmental racism that's happening in our community, but also just to address the concerns, and hopefully we could get to a solution to find a relationship to treat our community a little better in reconciliation, and hold government accountable for the past doings of the Transport Canada. It's unfortunate that we've come to this position, and we want to make sure that voices of the community of Fort Chipewyan are heard, and we start communicating better and find a path forward. So thank you very much on behalf of Fort Chipewyan Métis Nation. Bye.
Hello, I'm Allan Adam, Chief of the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation. You know, I come before you that we stood on this matter since 2013, and I've met with the Minister of Transport Canada at the time to talk about the big dock issue in relation to where Canada wanted to give the dock to the community and to the First Nations itself in transporting all reliability over to the First Nations as well too. And ever since then, we've been reluctant to take ownership of the big dock, and you know, we wanted to get fixed up, dredged out, so we could use it for emergency planning when forest fires came into our community in the last 2 years. And out of that, what we found out when we told Transport Canada to dredge the dock and fix it up, and they said, you guys go ahead and do it. And when we applied for permits, we find out that the whole area is contaminated, and we were told not to touch it, leave it alone, and if we were to dig up anything with a hoe or operator or whatsoever, myself as the community leader will be put in jail. You know, is that the kind of treatment we get because we are First Nations people here in Canada? When we speak about environmental issues in relation to our community, which are known, 51 known cancers in our community, 31 of them are rare. And you're telling me that you're going to put me in jail because I'm going to speak up on a contaminated issue that Canada knew ever since 1997. And you're going to continue to lie to us here for no reason. I'm here to set the story straight and fix this thing because I'm tired of coming back here with no results in hand, other than the fact to take the responsibility away from Transport Canada and say, here, we fixed the problem when the contamination is still there. Canada has to do a better job at fixing up their responsibilities. Do not leave it to the First Nations or the community of Fort Chip to fix up this matter, because if we do put any kind of machinery in that area, I am going to be held reliable and I'm going to be incarcerated for that matter. And this has to stop. This is no more lies whatsoever. This is not a game, because our people are dying in our community from rare cancers still today. And it's a fact that's going to continue to happen if we don't get to the bottom of this. And if Transport Canada is holding and withholding information in regards to contamination, well then, at least we could start from a starting point of where all the hiddens are happening. Because we always said at Fort Chip, there is an issue when it comes to the water crisis in Fort Chip. We believe that the water is poisoning our community. That's why the people are dying in our community. There's been oil spills from the oil sands back in the 80s. It's continued on in the 90s with no repercussion of anybody being held responsible. We have a tailings pond that was leaking back in 2020 that was held from us also. Both levels of government knew about it, provincially and federally. So when are you guys going to come clean and start telling the truth and fix up our contaminated site that you helped create? You know, and don't be shy about it, because there is going to be a price tag, and today's not going to be a fun day to talk about this. So that's our issue, and I hope Canada comes clean about fixing the issue instead of just dragging it on for no reason.
Folks are happy to take questions. Natasha?
Yeah, Natasha Belowski, Canada's National Observer. I've got one for you, Taylor. I'm wondering, with this upcoming committee meeting today, we're going to hear from the Northern Alberta folks, but what about on Thursday? What are you most wanting answers for from the minister?
The minister will be, this is the Transport Minister, Minister Anand will be appearing on Thursday to answer questions from the committee. We want to know why, despite being in conversation with this community since 2013, government officials did not disclose the fact that this was a contaminated site, nor did they proactively come forward with that information during discussions about essentially selling the dock to the community. I think that the government has been incredibly negligent. This is a clear example of environmental racism, and there needs to be accountability, an apology, and a change in policy moving forward so this never happens to any community again. You know, we think about communities in southern parts of Canada, more populated places perhaps. something like this would never be allowed to happen. And yet we see remote Indigenous communities across the country, when they're exposed to environmental contamination, it's a different story. And in this case, there are serious questions that the government hasn't been able to answer. Now, at hours before the hearings, we have the government sending a letter to these communities, gaslighting them, telling them that, in fact, they had emailed them these contamination reports long ago. That's completely unacceptable. What we expect in this case is full disclosure and a conversation about how it's going to be rectified and cleaned up so that this community is not affected by these contaminants that have such an impact on human health.
And Ms. Tuccaro, Mr. Cardinal, and Mr. Adam, can you talk a bit more about this email you received this morning, it sounds like?
So the letter we received this morning just kind of addressed that correspondence did go out in the past. To our knowledge, we have not received this. We have our people working on this. But at the same point, our site was never remediated. So that's where this comes back to, is nothing was ever done. Sure, if correspondence was sent in the past, it was, but there was no follow-up, no remediation, and that is what brought us here today. Because we would have addressed this back then and not waited and exposed our children and our grandchildren to these contaminated areas that they clearly classified as commercial when they're not. It's a commercially used, but is mostly used for recreational and our way of life, because this is where everyone comes to dock to take their boats out to go and use the land for hunting and fishing. And so this is why it's a concern, is our children are swimming in this area daily in the summer months. And so it's a huge concern as to why it hasn't been remediated.
Follow-up, if I may. What have you been hearing from, from members since this news really came to light this summer? Like, what type of, just everyday people in the community, what are they thinking?
It has created a lot of fear because it is unknown. We do know that arsenic, nickel, and hydrocarbons are actually in the water, and these are cancer-causing agents, which, in fact, being from a community that has a high rare cancer rates, we have many bile duct cancers and whatnot, and so to bring this to light, it just is what else is added, who's been exposed and whatnot. So, good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone else?
Thanks, Kendrick here. I guess I wanted to elaborate a little bit on, the mental health that it's also created in the community. A lot of the outstanding communications from, the federal government on Transport Canada's big dock in Fort Chipewyan, it's created an uproar in our community. It's, the children are asking questions. The elders are asking questions, and when are we going to actually get this remediated? When is Transport Canada going to come to the table and come to the community and take time to build a relationship? Like I said before, find a solution, build a relationship, come to Fort Chipewyan, see for yourself what's going on. Case studies, work on a plan and a path forward. All those stuff are very important underlying issues for our community, and we want to make sure that we set the tone and come back again if we need to, and come back again if we need to make sure that government hears our voices in Chip. It's very, very important. We stand here and we want to make sure that it's done properly. We have a lot of, wild food diets that that our community is accustomed to. Living off the land and having a connection to Mother Earth in some way that is important to the community. Those are important issues that we need to address, and our voices need to be heard on those matters as well. And not only that, I think that at some point in the reconciliation process with Transport Canada, they need to come to the table and hear how sensitive it is to contaminate our community of Fort Chipewyan, contaminate the mines of our community, contaminate Mother Earth, and realize the significance of what it means to our community, our culture, our way of life. That's where I am accustomed to focusing on, and along with the leadership and community, we will not stop. We will keep on pushing forward and hold government accountable. They know that they've done wrong, so admit it. Admit it, and let's move on. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
When it comes to the issue in regards to how we took the correspondence, you know, the information has been shared with both the Mikisew Cree First Nation and the Fort Chipewyan Métis, but it wasn't shared with ACFN. So whatever was shared with both MCFN and the Métis back in 2016 to 2018, whatever, that was not shared with ACFN. What was shared this morning was shared with ACFN, but it was not shared both to Mikisew and the Métis. And it's referred to them. So there is a confusion here, and the confusion is that Canada is playing games with the First Nations of the community of Fort Chip and try to divide and conquer us, because they're conflicting information and saying this and that whatsoever, but in reality, we're not here to play games. We're here to set the record straight. Fix up your damn problem, and let's get this thing on the road, because if we were told back in 2016 about this issue, about the contamination, the problem would be fixed already, because I would never let anybody off the hook on this matter. And because ACFN wasn't notified back in 2016, it still went unaccounted for. And you got to remember, the First Nations in Alberta in 2016 were dealing with the agricultural benefits case throughout the whole region. So all of the First Nations were dealing with other things other than this issue of the big dock in the community of Fort Chip. So, you know, we got a lot of things to fix up, but Canada can't keep on deflecting this. And I'm going to send a clear message to the Alberta government. When we're done here with the federal government on the dock issue, we're going to come and talk to you about the dock that you hold responsible, the Alberta Forestry Dock as well.